really nice. I really like the name, the word Terra and the crusher, you know, land crusher. That's actually what it is, right? It's not Latin, that's Tamiya language, guys. Hey guys, welcome back. As you saw in my previous video, I did buy a really cool retro truck once again. This is a Tamiya Terra crusher. This is from, I think, around 2002. And I'll tell you this, I had one of these when these were new. I paid $399 for this ready to run from AHC 1921 or 39, whatever it was, in Manhattan by Penn Station. I lugged it all the way back on the subway, and the box to this thing was huge, and I was probably, like, I think in middle school maybe at that time, so this thing had a lot of weight to it. If you look up the specs to it, you'll see that this thing weighs in at 13 pounds, which is considerably more than its direct competitor from back then, the T-Maxx. A lot of that weight, if you look it up online, you will see a lot of the negative criticism comes from the wheels. These wheels are just really enormous. They're huge. Let me show you for now. This is a Traxxas T-Maxx wheel from the same time frame. Look at how much bigger the Tamiya Terra crusher wheel is. I mean, this thing is insane. The chevrons on this alone are just enormous. Now, I looked it up. The wheels alone, these 4 wheels weigh 4 pounds. So, you know, 4 over 13 is a huge amount of weight when you're equipped with a .18 size engine, which this thing has. The engine was one of the main negative criticisms here. But I'll tell you, I remember running this, it was quick, it wasn't slow. I remember it was basically about the same speed as a T-Maxx, although when this thing was rolling, it had so much momentum, so much weight, and it really felt well planted on the ground. I really loved this. It had a lot of really cool, interesting features, and as I was looking through my old RC Nitro magazine, remember I showed you guys this in a previous video? I discovered a full 2-page ad on this. Let me show you guys here a picture of the ad. Really cool marketing. So they made a lot of claims on this Nitro truck, and having owned this when it was new, I'll tell you this, most of them were completely accurate. So this was really their first kind of popular mainstream competitor with anything that was HPI or Traxxas. Now clearly Tamiya lost the battle to Traxxas, and I could tell you this, the reason is this thing was just really underpowered. It only has a .18 engine. So you see this right here, the engine on top, it is just so puny compared to the rest of the chassis. The Terra crusher that I had back then, I eventually wound up, I would say, looking back at it now, destroying it. I converted it to run an Offna Hyper 8 port that I could never start. That was just such a hard engine to start. It ripped the pull starter cord. I had to eventually replace the cord with a metal one. And after that point, I basically couldn't even get it to idle well because it just had so much compression. I'm sure that if it passed the break-in stage fine, then it would have been a good running motor. But it was quick, but it was not easy. You couldn't just put in a big block into this as if you wanted to. You had to get a special conversion kit. At that time, I paid, I think, about $150 for a conversion kit, which included a whole new metal chassis, almost all new running gear. I had to give it the forward reverse transmission. And then this thing, the reverse transmission, is really what I think I loved about it. So back then, the T-Maxx did have reverse, but if you remember, it had 3 channels. And the reverse was shiftable, you know, from a little toggle switch on the remote. So it was a good system, but it had 3 servos. This thing only had 2 servos. So the reverse in this was engaged when you used your regular 2-channel remote. That was obviously factory equipped. You would have to stop all the way, and then you would have to press the trigger back a little bit more, and then you would have an actual differential clutch in the transmission engage your reverse. Very clever. I'll tell you this, it never messed up. There was never any cases where, you know, it engaged while still going forward. That never happened. So when it took Traxxas years to come out with the Traxxas OptiDrive to make sure that you have a reverse lockout while going forward, this had a very clever system that prevented you from doing so to begin with. So first the truck would stop, and then would engage reverse on its own. This particular truck condition is relatively unknown to me. Everything you see that was included in the auction I have on this table right here, including this remote start wand. If you look on top here, this thing actually has a fuse from a car, and it says 20 amps. I already removed the fuse and I looked at it and it was busted. So chances are there's going to be some kind of situation going on here. Hopefully, you know, I don't have to fully disassemble the motor, although it looks like I will have to. The motor here is missing the glow plug and it looks seized. I tried to spin over the flywheel with my fingers, but it's seized. So that's not a good sign at all. You never want to see that happen. But you saw one of my previous videos, right guys, where I fixed the OS engine from the Losi XXXNT, so this is probably going to be no different, although this is a lot more complicated. This chassis is fairly complex. It looks like a really nice made modular design, and it is. You could tell right here in the middle is your automatic transmission. They call it the frat. It has a sticker on it. It says the forward reverse automatic transmission, and it worked really well. The chassis layout itself is fairly robust, so it's not a complete solid aluminum plate. You only really have the aluminum plate up to this radio box in the front. Another notable feature about this, and I was really amazed when I think I read about this back then, is the fact that this thing has a massive 5th scale steering servo. So I'm not going to disassemble the radio box now, it's in there. I'll show you guys a picture here of what the servos look like from the Tamiya website. So it had a 9 kilogram steering servo. That's about 134 ounce-inches of torque from the regular steering servo. So, you know, that is more than modern, I guess, the modern Traxxas waterproof steering servo. So back then, compared to a stock servo, I think they were rated at about 30 ounce-inches. This was quadruple the steering torque. You know, you really need it to move these giant wheels. And when I move it, you know, there's almost no steering slop. You know, I could wobble this a little bit, but that's just the bell crank going around a little bit. So really precise steering from what I remember back when this thing was new. Really nice. In terms of the drivetrain, you know, it's what you would expect. It's a double wishbone independent suspension, very similar to the T-Maxx, and it does have these 8 oil-filled shocks. Very good. I remember they never leaked any oil, and the damping was really good. Let me just show you what I mean by really good. So I'll just drop it. Look at that. Do you see that rebound? And guys, this is 13 pounds. Look at that. Really nice. Really nice. So this thing was a really successful and good jumper. The body itself also relatively unique, I gotta say. It is thicker than the regular Lexan that every other manufacturer was using at that time. So I don't even remember ever damaging this body. I had no cracks on this, and I rolled it, I flipped it, I thrashed it pretty bad. I think this was my second Nitro RC that I had, and my first one I pretty much destroyed, which is to be expected when you have a Nitro truck. You know, you're pretty much gonna be abusive to it at all times. Let's take a closer look at some of these chassis components. They are really nice, and this one actually has a lot of the original stickers left here, so this kind of makes me think that, you know what, maybe it'll be in okay condition. As I said before, the motor inside looks fairly clean. There's no rust inside, but there's also no glow plug, so that is a bad sign. And I also could not spin the flywheel over with my hand, so yeah, the motor is definitely seized. This is the glow plug wire, so as you had the glow plug, it would just go on top here, just like the Traxxas T-Maxx Easy Start systems. You would have no problem. In the back here, we have our port for the electric start. Notice how it has this original cover protection here. So let's remove this. All right, so to remove, this is your Tamiya starting wand. It will go in like this. It only goes in one way, and then you press a button, and boom, this thing would fire up. Really nice system. I remember it worked every single time without fail. Really nice. If you know anything about racing, you would know that a 90-degree header is not what you want. So this results in the exhaust coming out from here and basically bouncing back into the exhaust port. Creates a really bad kind of flow for your complete exhaust. Even though this has a really nice tuned pipe, the exhaust was a problem. So all you needed to do was have like a nice kind of modular curved exhaust header, and this thing would have been much faster. It's actually some of the criticism I read about this on forums at the time. So a lot of people did upgrade that. I never did because I like the stock factory design on this. On top here we have our sealed radio box with 3 clips. Let's remove them. Let's take a look inside. Really not much to see on top here. All the servos are on the bottom. This throttle servo, you could tell it has 3 linkages coming out of it. So this is basically your throttle linkage going to your carburetor, which is normal. And then you have 2 other reverse and brake linkages. So this is where all the complicated design for the reversing system would go into play. Basically, this ran on regular batteries. On the bottom, you have your receiver, and the fit scale servo is way below here. So I'm not going to remove this right now. So looking on the bottom of it, you know, you also have a lot of durability. So unlike the E-Maxx and the T-Maxx at the time, which had regular plastic universal drive shafts over here, this has really solid metal drivetrain. So I checked online and it looks like this was discontinued somewhere around 2004. Here's a little bit of a screenshot from the way back when machine. You could see that it says the Tamiya Terra crusher has been discontinued from Tower Hobbies and it was replaced by the Tamiya TNX. This truck did spawn a whole bunch of other product lines that basically were the same chassis design in this, which is an 8th scale, ready to run, you know, Nitro racing truck. This thing was not very good at the racing part, just because the wheels were just so enormous and the engine was underpowered. This was replaced by the Tamiya TNX, which had a couple advantages in regards to racing. It had smaller tires and it had an engine designed by OS. It was still the same .18 size engine, but really to me this was kind of the epitome of the Tamiya Terra crusher. I really like the name, the word Terra and the crusher, you know, land crusher. That's actually what it is, right? It's not Latin, that's Tamiya language, guys. I'm just kidding. This is not a very long video, and trust me, I have a lot more information about this, and if I get into talking about that, this is going to be a 25-minute video. So I'm going to try to look over this chassis, maybe try to repair it. I noticed that the fuse in here is blown out, so that's not a good indicator, but it's just a regular automotive 20 amp fuse. I mean, how funny is that? I don't remember Traxxas using that. So I'm gonna make sure that you guys stay updated on this project. If you had one of these, I'd really like to hear your stories on this. I was probably the only one that had it. Let's face it, let's be honest here. People were buying Traxxas at that time, and you know what? I did too. There it is, guys. Thanks so much for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe. Till next time.